December 1st, 2018. In Auckland, New Zealand, a 22-year-old British backpacker walks into the city to celebrate her birthday. Her name is Grace Millane, adventurous, free-spirited, and on the trip of a lifetime. That night, she matches on Tinder with a man who seems charming, confident, and eager to meet. CCTV cameras capture their evening together, laughing, kissing, moving from bar to bar. Grace even texts a friend, "It's going really well." But those would be the last words she ever sent. Within hours, Grace vanished. Within days, her family's worst fears would come true. And the man she trusted enough to spend her birthday with would be revealed not as a date, but as a killer. This is the case of Grace Millane. Grace Emmy Rose Millane was born in September 1996 in Essex, England, the youngest of 3 children. She grew up in a warm, loving family where she was known for her energy, humor, and kindness. Grace wasn't just bright, she was artistic too. She loved painting, photography, and documenting the world around her. At school, she excelled both in academics and sports. Friends described her as outgoing and adventurous, someone who was always ready to explore new places and meet new people. After finishing her studies, she went on to attend Lincoln University, where she graduated with a degree in marketing in 2018. Grace was at a crossroads. She could have gone straight into work, but she wanted more. She dreamed of seeing the world before settling down. So she set off on the kind of journey many young people only imagine. South America first, then on to New Zealand, where she planned to spend time traveling, hiking, and celebrating her 22nd birthday. Her family supported her decision, proud of her independence and courage. For Grace, this trip wasn't just about adventure. It was about embracing life fully, taking in every experience before she began her career back home. On December 1st, her birthday weekend, she opened Tinder in Auckland. Not unusual for a solo traveler wanting to meet someone new. It was here she connected with a man who seemed charming, confident, and eager to meet. His name was Jesse Shane Kempson, a 26-year-old living in Auckland. On the surface, he appeared polite, social, and confident. The kind of man who could make a good first impression. But behind that mask was a much different reality. Jesse's childhood had been turbulent. Born in 1991, his family life was fractured, and his relationships with relatives were strained. By his mid-20s, those bonds had collapsed entirely. He drifted from one job to another, never holding stability for long. Financial struggles followed him everywhere. And instead of facing them, Jesse often turned to lies. He created a version of himself he wished was real. A man with steady work, a respectable background, and a promising future. In truth, he was insecure, deeply unsettled, and increasingly manipulative. Dating apps became his escape. They allowed him to reinvent himself with every match. To some women, he claimed he was successful and ambitious. To others, he spun stories of hardship to win sympathy. It was a pattern of charm, deceit, and control. Those who spent time with him described a troubling cycle. Jesse could be attentive and flattering one moment, then cold, secretive, or even menacing the next. What he lacked in stability, he tried to make up for in dominance. By late 2018, Jesse was spending much of his time online, scrolling through profiles and arranging dates. When Grace's photo appeared on his screen, she must have seemed like another opportunity, a bright, trusting traveler far from home. Grace saw only what Jesse wanted her to see. She agreed to meet him on her birthday weekend December 1st. To her, it was an evening of celebration. To him, it was something far darker. On the evening of December 1st, 2018, Grace Millane walked into Auckland's bustling city center. It was her birthday weekend, the first she had ever spent so far from home. The city streets were alive with music, chatter, and neon lights spilling out of bars. Grace had spent months traveling, meeting strangers, and finding new adventures. That night, she had arranged one more. Through Tinder, she connected with Jesse Kempson. He was 26, a local, and had suggested meeting for drinks at Sky City, a popular entertainment complex. For Grace, it was nothing unusual. She had used dating apps before on her travels, and it felt like an easy way to meet new people in an unfamiliar place. CCTV cameras recorded the moment she arrived. Grace walked confidently into the building, her smile quick and natural. Jesse was already waiting, dressed neatly, carrying the air of a man eager to impress. To anyone else, they looked like two young people starting a casual night out. Over the next few hours, they moved from bar to bar, their every step captured on grainy surveillance footage. At one stop, Grace laughed openly, leaning closer as Jesse spoke. At another, they sat side by side, sipping drinks, their body language suggesting an easy comfort. They even shared a kiss, looking in that moment like any ordinary couple enjoying a night together. Grace sent a short text to a friend during the date. "It's going really well." Just 5 words, but they carried the excitement of a young woman enjoying herself on her birthday weekend. That message would be the last she ever sent. The date continued late into the night. Jesse suggested they return to his apartment. Grace agreed, unaware that every decision, every step was quietly sealing her fate. CCTV caught them again as they walked back through the city streets, arm in arm. Grace appeared relaxed, comfortable, even happy. Nothing in her demeanor suggested fear or hesitation. At the entrance to Jesse's apartment building, another camera picked up their arrival. The footage shows Grace walking confidently beside him, following him into the elevator. The doors slid shut, closing them off from the outside world. For Grace, it was just another part of a night out. For Jesse, it was the point where the mask of charm could finally fall away. That elevator ride would be the last time anyone ever saw Grace alive. What happened behind Jesse's apartment door was hidden from the cameras, but what investigators would later discover painted a chilling picture. Hours after they had walked inside together, Jesse was seen leaving the building alone. His expression was no longer animated, no longer engaged. Instead, he looked calm, almost detached, as if nothing unusual had happened. By the time the sun rose on December 2nd, Grace's phone was silent. Her family's birthday messages went unanswered. Her friends received no reply. Grace, who had been so full of life and curiosity, had vanished. Meanwhile, Jesse was already setting his next moves into motion. His calm demeanor on the CCTV would soon unravel into a disturbing trail of lies, cover-ups, and chilling actions that betrayed the truth of what really happened in his apartment that night. If you're still watching, please hit the like button. It won't cost you anything, but helps us a lot. And if you want to see more crime stories like this, make sure you subscribe to our channel. When daylight broke over Auckland on December 2nd, the city stirred to life as usual. But inside Jesse Kempson's apartment, the night before had already turned into something darker. Grace Millane, the young traveler who had walked in smiling, was gone. What happened behind closed doors was known only to Jesse, but what came next was documented in excruciating detail by CCTV and receipts. Instead of panic, instead of calling for help, Jesse began his day with cold calculation. That morning, he left the apartment alone. Cameras caught him moving calmly through the city, showing no trace of the chaos that had unfolded hours earlier. His first stop, a nearby store where he purchased cleaning products. Later, he was seen at another shop, carefully selecting a large suitcase. To outsiders, it looked like ordinary shopping. Investigators would later piece together the chilling reality. Jesse was preparing to conceal Grace's body. While he carried out his errands, Grace's family back in England sent her messages, wishing her a happy birthday. Each text went unanswered. Her friends, too, tried to reach her, confused by the sudden silence. For them, concern was only beginning to stir. For Jesse, the cover-up was already underway. By the afternoon, CCTV tracked him again. He returned to his apartment, the suitcase in hand. Hours later, he rented a car. Investigators would later discover where he drove. To the Waitakere Ranges, a remote area of dense bushland outside the city. But perhaps the most disturbing detail was what Jesse did in between. On the very same day Grace's family was desperately trying to reach her, Jesse was on another Tinder date. He met another woman for drinks, just hours after Grace had vanished. And during that encounter, he let slip something chilling. He spoke about how someone could hide a body. The woman thought it was a bizarre, unsettling comment. She had no idea she was sitting across from a man who had already carried it out. Back at the apartment, Jesse continued cleaning. He scrubbed surfaces, erased traces, and rehearsed the story he would later tell police. To the outside world, he still looked like a man living an ordinary life. But his every move, every receipt, every camera frame was leaving behind a trail that would soon betray him. Meanwhile, Grace's phone remained silent. Her father, David Millane, grew increasingly alarmed when her messages stayed unread. For her to suddenly disappear was completely out of character. By the evening of December 2nd, Grace had officially gone missing. Jesse, however, carried on as though nothing had happened. He returned the rental car. He kept up appearances, and he blended back into the city. The young woman who had texted her friend just one night earlier, "It's going really well," had vanished without a trace. And the man she had trusted enough to spend her birthday with was already deep into a cover-up that shocked even experienced detectives. But despite Jesse's attempts to erase what he had done, he overlooked one thing. The city was watching. The cameras, the receipts, the timelines, all of it was waiting to expose him. By December 3rd, Grace Millane had been silent for 2 days. Her family in Essex grew increasingly alarmed as birthday calls and messages went unanswered. Grace was careful, independent, and always kept in touch with family, especially while traveling alone. For her to vanish without a word was deeply out of character. That same day, she was officially reported missing. New Zealand police launched an urgent inquiry, aware that the disappearance of a young foreign tourist could quickly turn serious. Detectives began building a timeline, retracing Grace's steps in the city on the night of December 1st. CCTV footage revealed the trail clearly. Grace was seen meeting Jesse Kempson at Sky City, then moving with him between several bars, drinking and laughing. The final images showed them entering Jesse's apartment building just before midnight. From there, the trail ended. Grace never walked out again. Detectives brought Jesse in for questioning. At first, he played the part of the cooperative date, calm, polite, and seemingly concerned. He told officers they had gone back to his apartment, but that Grace had left the next morning, alive and well. He claimed he had no idea what happened after, but police weren't convinced. His story didn't match the CCTV timeline. And as investigators dug deeper, the cracks widened. Jesse's financial records showed troubling purchases, cleaning products, a suitcase, and a rental car, all within hours of Grace's disappearance. His phone activity told a darker story, with late-night searches for violent pornography and disturbing questions about body disposal. Detectives searched his apartment and uncovered faint traces of blood, attempts at cleaning, and signs that a serious crime had taken place inside. By December 8th, just a week after Grace's disappearance, police had enough evidence to act. Jessie Kempson was arrested and charged with Grace's murder, even though her body had not yet been found. The arrest was a turning point. What began as a missing person investigation was now officially a homicide case. But detectives knew their work wasn't finished. Grace's family needed answers, and they needed to bring her home. With Jessie in custody, investigators turned to the next vital clue: GPS data from his rental car. The records showed he had driven west of Auckland into the Waitakere Ranges, a vast and rugged area of dense bushland. Search teams combed through the wilderness, bracing themselves for what they might find. On December 9th, their fears were confirmed. In a shallow grave, covered with soil and vegetation, lay the body of Grace Millane. For her family, the discovery was devastating. David Millane, who had flown halfway across the world in hope of finding his daughter, now faced the unbearable reality that she was gone. For New Zealand, the case that had gripped the nation took a darker turn. And for Jessie Kempson, the calm facade he had worn so convincingly in the interview room was shattered. The evidence, the CCTV, the receipts, the digital trail, and now Grace's body was overwhelming. The mask of charm had fallen away, and the truth of what happened on Grace's birthday night was finally coming into focus. When Jessie Kempson was led into the interrogation room, he carried himself with the same composure he had shown since Grace's disappearance. He didn't appear nervous or flustered. Instead, he leaned into the role he had played all along, the concerned man caught in an unfortunate situation. At first, Jessie repeated the story he had given detectives earlier. He claimed that after their night out, Grace had left his apartment the next morning, alive and well. He insisted he hadn't seen her since. His voice was calm, his answers measured. But across the table, investigators already had evidence that contradicted his every word. They pressed him with CCTV footage, pointing out that Grace was never seen leaving the building. They showed him receipts of the cleaning supplies and suitcase he had purchased the following day. They confronted him with the digital trail, the disturbing searches on his phone in the hours after Grace was last seen alive. Bit by bit, Jessie's version of events began to shift. He admitted that Grace hadn't left the apartment after all. Instead, he claimed something had gone wrong during what he described as consensual rough sex. According to him, she had asked to be choked and he had complied. But when she stopped breathing, he said, he panicked. To investigators, this was less a confession than an excuse. Jessie presented himself as the victim of circumstance, not the perpetrator of violence. He insisted he hadn't meant to harm Grace, that her death had been accidental. Yet the cold facts painted a different picture. The cleaning, the suitcase, the burial in the Waitakere Ranges. These weren't the actions of a man who had simply panicked. They were the calculated moves of someone desperate to cover his tracks. Still, the admission was crucial. For the first time, Jessie acknowledged that Grace had died in his apartment. He admitted to disposing of her body, though he framed it as a mistake made in fear rather than an act of murder. The detectives let him speak, documenting every word. His tone remained eerily controlled, even as he described carrying Grace's body out of the apartment and driving it into the bush. At moments he seemed detached, almost clinical, as though he were recounting someone else's story. What Jesse didn't realize was that his confession, instead of absolving him, tied him more firmly to the crime. His explanation of accidental rough sex would become the cornerstone of his defense, but it was a defense already collapsing under the weight of evidence. Grace's injuries, the timeline, the cover-up, all of it contradicted his claims. By the time the interrogation ended, investigators had the final piece they needed. Jesse had placed himself at the scene, admitted his role in Grace's death, and revealed the cold steps he had taken afterward. The mask of charm was gone. What remained was a confession that shocked a nation, not because it brought clarity, but because it revealed the chilling lengths a man would go to twist the truth. By November 2019, Jesse Kempson's case had reached the High Court in Auckland. The world was watching. Grace's family sat through every session, forced to hear the details of her final night, while Jesse's defense clung to the story he had first told detectives, that her death had been the result of consensual, rough sex gone too far. Prosecutors dismantled that claim, piece by piece. They presented the chilling timeline: Jesse's searches for violent pornography, his purchase of cleaning supplies and a suitcase, the rental car that carried Grace's body to the Waitakere Ranges. The defense argued that Jesse never intended to kill Grace, that he had simply lost control in the heat of the moment. But the evidence told a different story, one of deception, calculation, and deliberate choices after her death. After days of testimony, the jury took less than 5 hours to reach their decision. Jesse Kempson was found guilty of murdering Grace Millane. At sentencing, the judge condemned his actions as callous and self-serving. Jesse showed no remorse, only silence, as he was handed a life sentence with a minimum non-parole period of 17 years. For Grace's family, the verdict brought justice, but no relief from their loss. Their daughter had been taken, her future stolen, by a man who had masked his darkness behind a smile. The trial was over, but the impact of Grace Millane's story had only just begun. Grace Millane set out on a journey to see the world, to celebrate her independence, her youth, and her love of adventure. She never returned home. Instead, her story became a warning about trust, deception, and the dangers that can hide behind a smile. Her murder sparked outrage, grief, and a global conversation about women's safety. But beyond the headlines and the courtroom, Grace should be remembered for who she was: a daughter, a sister, a friend, a young woman full of life and promise. Her family's words remain the truest legacy. She will forever be our sunshine. If this case moved you, please take a moment to hit the like button. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you never miss the next true crime story we uncover. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.